Stompin Tom here. As a small Canadian from the smallest province in Canada, who never thought he was anything more than a Canadian, I'd like to wish all Canadians a very happy birthday on this special 125th. This is a year that Canada is in crisis, and this is a year when we have to prove that we are Canadians, that we'll always be Canadians, we'll stick together through thick and thin, no matter from where we're from. We may be indigenous, or we may be from other countries, but whatever we can do to keep this country together on this 125th birthday, we have to do all that we can, and we have to wish every province will stay within the fold. As Stompin Tom from Skinner's Pond, and as an ordinary Canadian, I want all Canadians to be ordinary and have a heart that is going to keep this country together forever. Happy birthday, Canada. Yeah, 37. That includes compilations, of course, and some cover albums that I did. Original albums of my own writing would be, I think it's the 17th. Let's put it this way, I had hopes to. I often dreamt about that sort of thing. I've ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be a country western singer. I've always admired, people like Wilf Carter and Hank Snow and those guys. And so as the years came along, it was awful hard to get a start. But then when I did, and after Timmins, as you say, things began to click, and one thing led to another, and I was glad the way things happened. Now I'm very grateful to the Canadian people for buying my records and keeping me in their mind from time to time and on the record players. I'm very happy about that. It's unfortunate. It has a lot to do with opportunity in the country, and there's not a great deal here. It's too bad. On the other hand, it's unfortunate as well that a person not only has to be talented in this country, but you have to have an awful lot of fortitude and a lot of stay power and stamina to take all the setbacks and disappointments and still try to come up smiling and carry on. Not really. I'm not surprised and wasn't surprised because I don't know what I can put it down to, what the real reason of it is. I guess it's because maybe I identify with the country, and my music for that reason doesn't seem to be dated. It isn't, when I write a song, it just isn't for a certain period of time. There's a lot of history in my songs, and so whether I wrote a song about a happening or not, the people who were in and made it happen at that time, they'll always talk about it. So when I write about it, it's just a way of somebody who wants to talk about something they did, just put on a record and say, see, there, Stompin' Tom knows, he was there, he's seen it. So it's kind of a proof to people that if they picked tobacco or worked in a mine or hauled potatoes or whatever they may have done, it's nice to be able to say, here's a record, and this guy knows about this. So no, it's not surprising, because whatever people do, for as long as they do it in this country, I really think that my songs will be in the vogue rather, at that particular time. I hope they'll go on for a long time. No, I don't know. I guess in that respect, I'm different, than other writers too. I write for the need, I guess, to write. Where I see there's a need, that gets me in the mood. That is the inspiration. If I see something that needs to be written about, something of interest that hasn't been written about before, rather than trying to, sit down and write on the same old subject over and over and over again, I like to have a new story, or it has to be fresh, or at the very least, a totally new approach, maybe to the same old theme if I write that kind of a song. But it's the stories, a happening, somebody doing something that's different than somebody else is doing, if there's a laugh in it, or if it's sad, or whatever. The need to have a Canadian song written for that occasion is enough to prompt me to keep that thing in the back of my mind, and then when it comes to writing, I'll sit down and then those things come back to my mind, and I do have to get in a mood, though. I just can't run in from outside, sit down and write a song. I have to take a day or two and sit down and let the mood come, and then when the mood comes, then I can turn the songs out like one after another, for that matter. Well, let's put it this way. I retired for almost 14 years, and in all that time I didn't bother putting out an album at all. So I have no desire like that. It's just, there's a part of it that is a job to me. When I feel that I'm wanted, or what I'm doing, if my talent is wanted, well then I'll work like hell towards fulfilling the expectations from others. When I was told that, Tom, you better come back, your fans want you, and this kind of thing, I had to believe that. That had to sink in. And when enough people, told me that and everything, then I said, well, I have my certain doubts about the industry and doubts about, radio and this kind of thing and what's going on there. But I thought, well, I'm tied between the devil and the deep blue sea. The fans maybe don't deserve this. If they really want some more songs from Stompin Tom, I shouldn't maybe really let them pay for some gripe or something, or inadequacy or inconsistency that I may see throughout the industry. So I don't know. I've more or less come back for the fan. I think the basis of that question boils down to what kind of songs is it that I write. And my songs, when I write songs, they start out, the lyric comes first. So the whole song is built around a story and the lyrics. The music is a secondary thing. And so I only hire musicians, or those kind of musicians, who I feel at the time will enhance the lyrics of the song. The melodies, as you'll know, are quite simple, easy to catch on type of melodies. So that's why the music is really always downplayed, because the lyrics are so important, because it's the lyrics that are telling the story about Canada. And so if you've noticed that from album to album I may change musicians or whatever, it's because there's different songs and different albums, and they often require something a little different to enhance the new lyric, or to tell something. If it's a song about Prince Edward Island, well, it'll probably have a fiddle player in there that's going to sound a little like Don Messer, for instance. And if it's, out west, it's going to have a Western flavor probably to it. If it's French, it's going to have a sort of a Quebecois type of background, raunchy and fiddles and that kind of thing. So I'll probably go on doing that, because the bottom line again is the music is secondary, and it's to enhance the lyrics, what the words are saying. Well, we have a 5-time North American Championship, Graham Townsend, for fiddling. Graham is he's just amazing. He's not one of these kind of guys that he has to hear a tune 4 or 5 times before he can play it. He hears it once and bang. I mean, he knows it just like that. He played several instruments on this record. He's a multi-talented man, and yet he doesn't flaunt it. You know what I mean? He's a very humble sort of a guy, and very talented. Then the guy playing the banjo on there is Duncan Fremlin from Whiskey Jack. You may remember the group. Still on the go from time to time. I don't know how steady they're playing at the moment, but they get together every once in a while, and they play here and there. I believe they were on the Tommy Hunter show for a while, back a year or so ago. Who else is on there? There's Lloyd Bank. He's on a couple of numbers with Steele and Dobro. Oh, Graham Townsend's son, Gray Townsend, He does any of the drumming that's on there. You know, I'm not too up on drums, but there's drums in about 3/4 of the album. Although you may not be able to hear them sometimes because I try to blend them in rather than accentuate them. And oh yeah, Walter Ostanek. Of course, everybody knows that Walter is the polka king of Canada, and the Americans recognize it as well. He's had several nominations for Grammys and that kind of thing. It was funny how when we jammed it up a couple of times, he tried to make polkas out of some of the numbers by speeding them up, and it was quite hilarious. But oh, we had a lot of fun doing this album. It wasn't all just as sad as maybe some songs in the album might make you think, because you know, there's quite a few love songs on this one. Although most people don't realize that there's a lot of songs, there's a lot of sort of love songs on a lot of my albums. It's just that the ones that have comedy in them or whatever seem to take precedence, and people notice them more. And maybe there's not as much comedy this time, and so therefore the romantic songs or whatever are more noticeable. Well, I suppose, consciously or otherwise, over all these years, from 1964, I've often wondered, you know, why I've never made a hit parade chart on any radio station in this country. And each album that I put out, I try, if I can, to get, you know, the song or a song on there somewhere that is going to be, what do you call it, to have this potential that radio is looking for. They've told me since 1964 that I don't fit the format. Well, now either they haven't changed the format and it's always been the same since '64, or I don't know, maybe they got something against me. It's one or the other. But it's very odd to me that I can't seem to find a song after 37 albums, and all those songs. It's odd that there's not one that they can put on a playlist. So I hardly even expect it anymore because you know, what's the point? But in the back of my mind, subconsciously, there's always that thought, well, maybe there might be one or two on this album that maybe they'd play. So I've given them some of this romantic stuff because that's what's coming out of Nashville these days. It's all the love triangle. So I put a few more love triangle songs on this album in hopes that, you know, they may see something in it that's playable. I think my favorite on the album would be Prairie Moon. And then I would say Believe in Your Country, Bound the Fat Ball, Johnny Maple, and I have to say Lena Kathleen, of course, because I wrote that one for my wife Lena. And after all these years and 37 albums, she says, well, it's about time. Well, it was written for both of us, really. That was our wedding song. So about 2 weeks before we were married on Elwood Glover's television luncheon date program, by the way, in 1970, I better get this right, Lena might be listening to this, November 2nd, 1973. It was the first Canadian wedding on television, and it was up in the air. A lot of people, well, certain areas of the media accused me of doing it for hype and all this kind of thing. But I tell you, I had an awful lot of soul searching to do before we actually did it, and I can assure you that it wasn't for that reason. The main reason was because I was quite well known at the time and reaching a pinnacle, you might say, in country music in Canada and in my career. And I thought of all those people who had bought my records and who had come to my shows so consistently and all. It would be great to be able to invite everybody to the wedding of Stompin Tom. And when I was approached with the idea, I thought, what a hell of a way to allow everybody a sort of a window in, you might say, to see what was going on with their country singer Stompin Tom. So that was the big reason why it was done. Once I got the first verse and chorus down, I called her into my den and and said, I want you to listen to something and see what you think. And so she became, sort of quite emotional and trying to hold it back and everything. It was something that she had wanted to see happen, I guess, over, the years. And I had a lot of difficulty. It's not that I hadn't thought of writing a song before, but I had a lot of difficulty with writing a song with Lena, just the word Lena. Well, then when it finally occurred to me that her second name, Kathleen, was a lot better rhyming word, then I thought, hey, now I got the answer to my problem. So then it was a lot easier to write the song than just Lena by itself. My only answer to that is, once again, the music is not the important thing about Stompin' Tom, it's the lyrics. So as long as I have enough music to enhance the lyrics, because you'll notice in all of my albums, when it comes to lyrics, I think and I hope that you can understand every word, because I want the story to come out. I want it to be very clear so that everybody at the first listen or the second listen, they're going to know what the whole story is about. I'm not going to write a song where it says, I love you, but really you have to get the deeper message in the song where it says, I don't love you. My lyrics are very clear, to the point, and whatever I'm saying is what I mean. There's no double talk in the lyrics. So I think if you made what they call a big production out of things, with all your fancy trying to put some modern day dynamism or whatever new things into it, I think it would water it down. Because I think if it really comes down to it, I think I could do the same job with just my guitar. So I wouldn't need a band at all. But I think I got to go halfway. So instead of just me and my guitar singing the songs, there's a band there to show that there's, music behind it, but not going too far and making a big production. Well, thanks for saying so. I tried to do that, and I tried to give it a bluegrass feel, but you'll remember that bluegrass really only came into its own, although it's been a roots form of music for years and years. But really, I suppose in the in the 60s, it started to take hold just after the big folk input or whatever. When folk started to sort of level off, sort of bluegrass started to come in there, and then the 70s, there was a lot of bluegrass. I think that the song itself, I think what I tried to do in it was the instrumentation, to give it that sort of 60s, 70s flavor, instrumental-wise. But the song itself is, back to what we were saying a while ago, roots in terms of Wilf Carter, Hank Snow. These guys, they sang a lot of songs with that beat back when. So people can take it for what they want, but I think I had to add it for variety. It's a nice fast beat, and it does give you that bluegrass feel, and it's carefree. It's goodbye gal, you're not going to bother me anymore. I'm going to smile away your memory. And it's a good song to come out of those 3 songs before it, where they're kind of down, sad love song type of thing. Well, with that line, it's odd. That's a line. See, I co-wrote that song with a pal of mine, Gate Lapine. As a matter of fact, the same Gate Lapine who was the bartender that gave me the 5 cents for the beer in Timmins. And so he was down here, and he had this song that he was calling Alberta Martha. The very first line was, Alberta means so much to me. So I like the line because the line could apply to me, in almost any province. But why did I decide to leave it in the recording? Why would Alberta mean so much to me, or what was my thoughts? I think it was the mountains, because the first time I hitchhiked out there, I hadn't even hit Calgary yet, and I was looking at these clouds away off in the distance. It was a very clear day, and what I thought were clouds were actually the mountains. And when a guy picked me up and gave me a ride, I was mentioning the clouds on the horizon. He said, those are the foothills, the snow caps. I said, wow. And he only took me, maybe 5 or 6 miles or whatever. And I remember thinking, when I get out again and took a look at them, I remember thinking, wow, I'm from Skinner's Pond, PEI, and just a small island in the Atlantic, and I think the thought came to me, the magnificence, the grandeur, the bigness, that it made me feel so small in comparison to my country, and yet I was a part of this. And even though I was from the smallest province in Canada, like, I own this too. And even though I didn't have a penny in my pocket and I didn't own anything, it told me, I am yours. This is, you haven't seen me before, but I am here. And these sort of open arms, come and see me, you're a young fella, and come and travel me and taste my waters and all this kind of stuff. And I got filled right up with emotion. And nobody knows it, but I sort of turned my head over to the side of the road and cried a couple of tears a little bit and said, by God, I'm going to see you, and I'm coming. And then I traveled all through them and all this. I was only about 16 at the time. First, I hope we don't start thinking too late. But I think the thoughts should have been thought a long time ago. See, it's the Canadian consciousness. It's the awareness that people have for their country and of their country. People take vacations to the United States or elsewhere in the world, and they don't seem to want to know anything about their own country. So it's a consciousness that we need to develop. And once again, I have to bring in people like radio, for instance. I think that they could have helped a great deal to develop the Canada consciousness had they, a long time ago, began to play identifiably, and there's that word, identifiably Canadian music and Canadian content, identifiably so. So that when kids wake up in the morning or when going to school or whatever it is, when they start humming or whistling or whatever it may be, they're going to hum and whistle an identifiably Canadian song. Montreal is going to run through their mind, or Calgary is going to run through their mind, or the Yukon, or British Columbia, or PEI, or Newfoundland. Something is going to run through their mind when they're humming unconsciously. Today, we find that in Canada, the majority of people, their consciousness, musically, has to do with foreign cities, towns, heroes, whatever it is. So unconsciously, we always look to the United States. We look for a hero, we look elsewhere. We don't look in this country. So our focus is outside the country, not within. And we need this very badly. So I think radio could, and they don't seem to be wanting to do it even yet, but they have to. And all media has to. We have to bring a new generation of Canadians into Canada who are going to be Canada conscious. Now, I hope, as I said earlier, it's not too late, because this is what we need in order to keep Quebec in the country, because Quebec has to understand, and they're an awful lot more patriotic in Quebec than we are in the rest of Canada, I can assure you that, because even before the Quebecois ever came out, the most patriotic Canadians I ever found, as a matter of fact, I learned how to be a Canadian in the province of Quebec, because the Canadian patriotism was there long before there was ever a Quebecois, as a party or a separatist, I should say. So I found this all my life. I've lived there, and I've also found in those days that per capita, and being on the bum and that kind of thing, that when you're down, I found more people would help you in the province of Quebec than in other parts of Canada. Now, I don't know why, but I just know that that's the French-Canadian touch. It always has been. They seem to be very close to the ground, close to the soil, and they're down to earth. It could be because of their culture, their language. Maybe they feel they don't have the need that the English Canadians do to look to the United States for direction or whatever. So while English Canada has slowly moved into the camp of the United States, the French have not. So I don't see that the French have changed a great deal. I think that English Canada has slid rather than the French Canadians. I think they've always been the same. But the difference is, it's English Canada has made the difference in their consciousness of the country. They've lost a lot of it. I wanted to say something about the love affair that should be going on between French and English Canada. Separation should be the last thing that this country should be thinking of. This is the newest country in the world. And we're like a gem sitting on top of the North Pole. And I suppose now with the breakup of Russia, we are the largest country in the world. Recently I hear that the UN, some poll or something from the UN has declared that we are the greatest country in the world at this point in time to live in. Well, there's only one people in this world that don't understand why we're the greatest country to live in, and that's Canadians themselves, because they're outward looking. They never look at what we've got. They always look at somewhere else, greener pastures. Now, the United States hasn't done anything to help us, and I don't blame them, because they can play their music about their country and about their heroes and the whole thing, and talk about what a great country they have. Well, if our radio stations and our people are not going to say, hold on a minute now, you're not the greatest country in the world, we are. And we have to know that from inside. So when we look at Quebec, or any other province for that matter, we have to look at them as a sister province, not as somebody that's going to separate. So I've personalized English Canada in the song Johnny Maple as Johnny Maple, and Fleur-de-Lis as the female counterpart, the sister province. It's hard to write a song and say what you want to say about your country when it's splitting up. People will understand a marriage breakup a lot easier than they'll understand a piece of land saying we're going to move over here. So I personalized it and made Johnny Maple and Fleur-de-Lis, they're in love with each other. And there's nobody, the Laurentian Mountains or the seas or the oceans or nothing is going to separate them. And they're going to get married once and for all, and they're going to have a lot of little provinces and all this, and they're going to be happy ever after. Kids can understand that too. And that's what it's for. The sophisticates are going to laugh. They're going to say, what foolishness is this? Well, you know, if you can't get to the kids with your lyrics, you can't get to nobody. Because I'll tell you, I don't write songs for the media. I don't write songs for the industry. I don't write songs for the bankers, and I don't write songs for the corporation magnates or the billionaires or anything else. I write songs for the people that are out there living the lyrics that I write, and I write it in their language that they can understand. And so that's Johnny Maple and Fleur-de-Lis. I hope they get married soon and live happy ever after. Well, as a matter of fact, when that line hit me, the first thing I thought of, because, you know, I tried to think of something that somebody else may have said that would be comparable. And the first line I thought of was the sentence by President Kennedy. And he said something to the effect that, look not what your country can do for you, but rather what you can do for your country. Well, I used to give John F. Kennedy a lot of marks for that statement until I found out that the very same statement was made by Cicero in the, he was a Roman statesman back around 200 AD. So it kind of took a little bit away from Kennedy. But I can assure you that this one here hasn't been said by anybody. So it just sort of came to me. And I thought, oh boy, it gave me quite a lift to think, you know, here I am, Stompin Tom from Skinner's Pond, and where in the hell am I getting these brainy ideas from, you know? And I really do. I like it. I think it's probably the best statement I've ever come out with. If you don't believe your country should come before yourself, you can better serve your country by living somewhere else. It's a hell of a statement. What we've lacked in this country is, you know, we need patriotism. We need people to be proud of the country. And you know, it isn't the country itself, it's the people in it. We got to be proud of each other. It's no good to say I'm proud of some rock. It's the people that live around the rock. And can you like them or can't you like them? It's no good to say, well, what kind of a hell of a country do I live in? If you say that, you might as well be saying that to the people you're talking to. You might as well tell the people out and out, I don't like you. I'm moving out of here because I don't like you. Well, if you tell people that, and that's what people are saying when they say they don't like the country, or there's something wrong with the country, they're saying there's something wrong with the people in it. Well, lots of times change starts with oneself. So if you find something wrong with your country, the best thing to do is start changing yourself and be a better guy to your fellow man or that kind of thing, your neighbor, and clean up your own act, clean up your own backyard, clean up your own neighborhood, and by the time everybody cleans up their own neighborhood, we'll have a hell of a fine place to live in. And I think it's homework we got to do in this country. I think we're a young country. We're just crawling. It would be a shame to have a country split up without ever having any history. And that's what we need. And the only way we're ever going to have a history is we got to damn well make it. It's you and I and everybody that's got to make that history. We have to go out on a limb. We can't follow the United States into eternity. We have to show a Canadian road. I have to say, well, the songs that would mean the most to me would be the songs that enhanced my career, and I don't particularly know why they were chosen. I don't know why a Bud the Spud was chosen over the Coal Boat song or Roll On Saskatchewan. I don't know why. I mean, it could have happened the other way around. Maybe Roll On Saskatchewan would have been the big song and maybe Bud the Spud wouldn't have. Well, then I'd have to say, oh yes, I have Roll On Saskatchewan to thank. So for money-wise and the songs that made the money, you're looking at Bud the Spud, Joe Mufferaw, Sudbury Saturday Night, Tilsonburg, the Ketchup Song, those kind of songs. Never. No, I've heard some artists say, gee, I hope I never have to sing that song again. I never get tired of singing them. No, never do. And I can sing them with just as much verve the 139th time as the first time. The audience feels it, and there's something that goes through the air. I don't know how to explain it, but there's some kind of an electricity or a rapport or something. And once that connects, especially like once I get on a stage, once I get the first couple of lines out and I feel something happening, then all hell breaks loose and we have a hell of a time. And I'm one of the audience myself then. You know, I'm just there to do whatever the hell comes to my mind, and they're there to laugh and joke and have a good time, and it's all one big happy party type of thing. On the way on, you know, on the way on stage, yeah, well, even waiting in the dressing room, too, to be called. You know, you get the butterflies and you get nervous and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But no, once I'm out there in front of the mic, bang, no problem. Oh, I'll have a beer or two, you know, to loosen up before a show. Although, once again, some people have said, that Stompin Tom, he's got to be an alcoholic for sure. Well, I've gone on the stage a good many times without the beer, and it doesn't make any difference. There's something else that makes me drunk. It's the electricity in the crowd. It's a kind of a high that you get on. It's a feedback, you know, that you become part of something. Everybody becomes part of something. And I don't know how to explain it, but maybe if you've been to a concert, everybody has tried to put a name to it or something, but I've never been able to describe it accurately. I suppose I'd have to say your country thanks you, because I think for somebody to do Stompin Tom cover album or whatever, I mean, I say thank you because, well, you know, the best compliment I suppose that any writer can get was when somebody else does his material. But while you were asking the question and thinking a little more deeply on it, I think that Canada itself, the country, needs a lot more of that sort of thing, and whether somebody does a cover on Stompin Tom or not, but even greater, if they would write some songs about Canada themselves. And I would encourage every writer in Canada throw in some Reginas and throw in some Montreals and some Halifaxes or whatever into the song that they write, because even if it's a love song, I mean, a love song can go just as well if it's Montreal as it can if it's New York or Tennessee. You know, I mean, what's in a name? And if it's a good song, it's a good song. It shouldn't matter where the love affair takes place. So even if it's only a love song, and I say only because love songs don't say a hell of a lot, but there should be the Canadian earmarks on the songs when people write. But second to that, if they don't write them themselves, then yes, I'd love somebody to do some Stompin Tom. Well, I don't have any spare time, for one thing. Spare time is something I know very little about, unless if somebody pops in. I always make time for visitors or that kind of thing. So I'll put down whatever it is I'm doing to accommodate people. So at times like that, well, I might go out with them, maybe shoot a game of pool, or we sit around, chat, drink a few beers, play a few game of darts, that kind of thing. I haven't been on a vacation for the last 3 years or more. Well, in seeing the country, it's not what you see in the country, it's how you see the country. And yeah, I still like traveling across the country and up and down and this and that and way up on into, I've been up the Dempster Highway, way up into Tuk and these places, way up on the Beaufort Sea. You can drive all the way up there, and it's the only country in the world where there's a highway the people can drive up, but you don't meet anybody. There's no other Canadians want to drive up. I don't know why. It's the most beautiful country you ever seen in your life. I mean, you know, you stop to have a meal on a rock or something, and the Blue Jays, Whiskey Jacks, whatever they call them up there, they're right on your plate, you know, begging you for something to eat, and you reach down, your leg is itchy, and here's a squirrel trying to get up your leg, and he wants something to eat. And like, it's just beautiful. It's a paradise up there. And the further up you go, the better it is. It's virgin. It's untouched. You can lean down and drink the water out of the ditch. I mean, it's so pure. So it's how you see the country. And what I mean by that is when you go, even as a tourist, you're not going to see it right, because the guy at the gas station, when you pull in, he's got a smile on his face because he wants to make the money you got to buy the gas, that you're going to pay for the gas. But if you go hitchhiking, and the guy that you meet, whether it's in a gas station or no matter where it is, and he knows you haven't got any money in your pocket, he's going to treat you differently. Well, it's that side of Canada that very few people gets to see. It's the real people. How do people really react when you don't have any money in your pocket? Or when you're just a guy, he sees you walking down the road, and he knows you're coming in, whether it's for a drink of water, or what's he going to do? Is he going to ask to scrub my floor so I'll give him a meal, or how do I get rid of this guy, or what? So when you meet people that way, and then you get to meet them the other way, when you become somebody, when you do have a buck in your pocket, now you get to be able to contrast, because you'll meet the very same people who had a frown on their face the first time, a smile on their face the second time, and then you get to be able to see people with a lot more depth. And when you do that, then you get to know what Canadianism really is. You get to see the bad with the good. It isn't all smiles. So it's knowing your country in a very deep and moving experience. Canada is an experience, is really what it is. As long as I'm wanted, I'll be there. But you know, I really hate this fight, this continuous fight that must go on. I can't for the life of me, and once again we get back to radio, I can't understand for the life of me what I've ever did to these people. Somewhere I got off the track, or somewhere they got off the track, or we both got off the track. I don't know how it happened. But for some reason, as I said, from 1964 until this date, there hasn't been more than a small town radio that has sort of an individual station that has put me on a hit parade or something like this. I've never been on like on a national chart of any kind. That's a long time to not, and to have all those albums and everything, and to be turned down flat, as much as to say, Stompin Tom, no, we're not going to play him, and that's that. I don't know why. Even if I knew why, I might be able to accept it, but I don't know why. And they keep telling me, you know, they got all the excuses in the world. It's not recorded in Nashville, and it doesn't fit our format. And yeah, I think we have the record in the station, sir or ma'am, but well, we'll look around. If we can find it, we'll play it, but it never gets played. And it goes on like this, you know. I wish there wasn't that fight. It would make it so much easier for all of us if it wasn't. I'm having a hard time getting time for it. With, you know, so many other things going on, I have this very good friend of mine from Timmins. He's at present the publisher now of the Timmins Press. He started out there about 1965, and he's just started out as a, you know, a reporter or whatnot, and he's come a long ways. His name is John Farrington. He's originally from England. He's doing it whenever I can give him time, you know, to come down. So just recently, we've done about 2 weeks of interviews, and I think we have over 30 hours at this point in time of recorded interview, plus a bunch of stuff that I've already written myself over the years, which will be interspersed with the autobiography. So I don't know, I still couldn't tell you when it's going to be ready. We'd like to shoot for Christmas of this year, '92, but that might be a pipe dream. I don't know about Proud Canadian, because that kind of, it centers you out as somebody unique in these times. When do Canadians become proud Canadians? When there's a problem in the country? I think a person should be proud of their country at all times, and I think everybody should be proud of their country, so I wouldn't want to be set aside as saying the proud Canadian or that kind of thing. No, I'm just an ordinary Canadian, and I think all ordinary Canadians should be proud. So what would I want to be remembered as? I think somebody who just wrote a song about what he's seen and what he experienced and what he knew at the time that was happening, wrote about it, and doesn't deserve any more than any other proud Canadian would deserve, and that means all of us, really, just to become Canada conscious. Maybe it's like an apple on a tree, an apple on the Canadian tree, maybe. Maybe I ripened a little sooner than most, I don't know. If that's the case, then I'm sure all the apples are